Wanted, a woman of good appearance, attired like a lady. She has a remarkably broad nose, with eyes set close on either side, a puckered forehead, a peering expression, and probably rounded shoulders. She has had recourse to an optician at least twice during the last few months. As her glasses are of remarkable strength and opticians are not numerous, there shall be no difficulty in tracing her. And now you're going to explain to us, no doubt.
Oh, my deductions were simplicity itself. That the owner of this pince-nez is a woman, I infer from its delicacy and elegance.
And from the last words of the dying man, presumably.
Quite, yes. It's handsomely mounted in solid gold, so she's clearly a person of refinement and well-dressed. The clips are too wide for my nose, showing that hers must be unusually broad. My own face is narrow, yet I can't see through the centre of these lenses, so her eyes must be close-set. The lenses are also concave and of unusual strength. Anyone so short-sighted must have the physical characteristics that go with it. The frown, the peering eyes, the head thrust forward.
Yes, well, I can appreciate that, but how do you arrive at her double trip to the optician?
Oh, you notice that the clips are lined with tiny bands of cork, one slightly discoloured and worn, though not more than a few months old, the other almost new. Obviously it fell off and had to be replaced, and since they're evenly matched in size and style, we may assume that the lady went back to the same establishment for the replacement.
By George, to think I had all that evidence in my hands and never knew it.
I take it you plan to visit all the leading opticians.
Certainly. We've been inquiring after any strangers seen in the vicinity of Yoxley yesterday, or at the railway station, though without any success so far, I'm afraid. If it's not asking too much, Mr.
You want us to visit Yoxley with you tomorrow?
If you could. There's a train from Charing Cross to Chatham at 6 in the morning.
6?
We changed there for Yoxley Junction. We should reach Yoxley Old Place between 8 and 9.
We shall be on that train. Yes, the case has some intriguing features. We'll be delighted to accompany you, eh, Watson?
Oh, delighted, absolutely.
Yes, perhaps you'd be good enough to make up a bed on the sofa for the inspector. Then we can all have an early start.
Yes, of course. Let's hope the gale blows itself out during the night.
We've made good time. Not at all a bad journey.
Ah, there's the local constable waiting for us. Morning, Langdon.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Constable.
Good morning.
Well, now, any developments since I left?
No, sir. I'm afraid not. Nothing since last night.
No reports of any strangers? Have you made inquiries at local inns and lodging houses?
Yes, sir. There's no one in the district who can't be accounted for, except the ticket collectors here work in a shift system. The man who was on duty yesterday knocked off at midday, and he won't be on again until noon today.
Well, surely he could have been interviewed at home.
No, sir. He went to stay overnight with a certain person in Maidstone. Nobody seems to know who she is. But she could be his married sister.
Ah, let's hope so.
Well, in that case, there's nothing can be done until he returns. Shall we proceed to the house? The garden looks refreshed after the rain.
Still very damp underfoot. I take it this is the path you described?
Yes, Doctor. It runs along the side of the house.
Washed clean, of course, during the storm.
All the same, I'll take my oath there were no footprints on the path yesterday, Mr. Holmes.
And the marks on the grass?
They're along here. Well, they were. The grass has sprung up again.
Yes, I can still see a few traces. Yes, someone certainly passed this way. Yeah, the lady must have trodden carefully. One false step and she would have left a print on the path or in the soft earth of the flower bed.
Like I said, she must have been very cautious.
Certainly, a remarkable performance, remarkable. The back door, is it usually left open?
Oh, yes, country folk don't bother much with bolts and bars.
No, so our visitor had nothing to do but walk in. Very well, let's follow her example. I'd like to have a few words with the staff.
Mr. Holmes, this is the housekeeper, Mrs. Marker.
I'm very pleased to meet you, Mrs. Marker. This is my colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do, Mrs. Marker?
Good morning, gentlemen.
It's very good of you to assist us in our investigation.
Well, sir, we want to find out who did such a terrible thing. That poor Mr. Smith, such a respectable gentleman he was, he wouldn't hurt a fly. Whoever attacked him must have been a wicked, wicked man.
Not necessarily. I believe it was a woman.
Oh.
And when she entered the house, I don't think murder was in her mind.
What makes you say that?
Well, if it had been, she would have provided herself with some sort of weapon instead of having to pick up this knife from the bureau, which is where the young man generally worked, is it?
Yes, sir.
So, our visitor made her way in from the garden and found herself in the study. Of course, we've no means of knowing how long she was here, but...
Excuse me, sir, but I think I can tell you that.
Oh?
It can't have been more than a few minutes, because I was in here myself, dusting and tidying not long before. Not above a quarter of an hour at the most.
Thank you, Mrs. Marker. That narrows it down. So she enters the room and goes to the bureau. Not to the upper part, for that was open with a flap down, but to the drawers below, which are kept locked. Hello, what's this? Inspector, did you notice this scratch?
I saw it, Mr. Holmes, but there's nothing uncommon about that. You often find scratches round a keyhole.
Yes, but this one goes across the wood, too. It's very recent. See how the brass shines where it's cut? Mrs. Marker, did you dust the bureau yesterday morning?
Yes, sir.
Did you notice the scratch?
Oh, no, sir, I didn't.
Yes, I'm sure you didn't, because it hadn't happened then. Ah. Who has the key to this drawer?
The professor keeps it himself.
That's right. Professor Coram lent me his key and we went through the desk together, checking the contents. There's nothing missing. He assured me on that point.
I see. Now, Mrs. Marker, I wonder if I might talk to your young companion, Miss Susan Tarleton?
I promise you, my dear, there's nothing to be afraid of. Mr. Holmes just wants to ask you a few questions.
Yes, sir.
Anything you can tell us may be extremely helpful. Now, so far, we've established that an unknown lady entered this room yesterday morning and either unlocked this bureau or tried to do so.
Oh, begging your pardon, sir, but she couldn't have... There's only the one key, and Professor keeps that on his watch chain.
Well, then perhaps she'd got hold of a duplicate. Now, let's imagine the scene. While she's thus engaged, Mr. Willoughby Smith enters the room. In her panic, her key scratches the drawer. Smith seizes her. She grabs the knife to defend herself. She strikes at him, and the blow proves to be fatal.
Oh, sir, I heard him cry out.
Now, it's all right. Don't distress yourself.
Now, really, Holmes? I'm sorry. It was all over in a moment, and she made her escape. Tell me, Miss Tarleton, could she have got away through the hall and out by the front door?
No, sir, she couldn't. I'd have seen her from the top of the stairs.
Thank you. That rules out one possibility. I understand this other door opens onto a pair of corridors.
Yes, sir. One of them leads straight to the professor's room. She couldn't have got out that way.
So she must have gone the other way, through the back door and the garden, the way she came in. How very odd.
What's odd about it? Seems the obvious thing to do.
Yes, one might think so, certainly. But, Miss Tarleton, would you mind taking us to Professor Coram's room?
Yes, sir. If you just follow me.
Thank you. Yes, I'm anxious to make the professor's acquaintance.
This way, sir. That's the way to the back door.
Oh, yes. Yes, coconut matting in both corridors.
Does that have any bearing upon the case?
Yes, possibly. I don't insist upon it. I may be wrong. Yet it seems to be suggestive.
Here we are, sir.
Come in.
Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, sir.
Come in, gentlemen. This is a rare privilege. I meet so few people nowadays. Thank you, Tarleton. That'll be all.
Good, sir.
It is a pleasure to meet you, though I'm sorry it must be under these unhappy circumstances. You must excuse my... The doctor tells me I spoke too much. Are you a smoker, Mr. Holmes?
I am indeed, though I generally prefer a pipe.
No, but you must sample one of my Russian cigarettes. They are specially packed and dispatched to me. And you, my dear sir, I can recommend them.
Yeah, thank you. They look rather exotic.
Exotic and exquisite. I have a fresh supply delivered every fortnight. It's bad for me, no doubt, but an old man has few pleasures.
Watson? Go. Well, yes, I commend your taste in tobacco, Professor.
Yes, tobacco and my work. They were all I had left, and now only tobacco remains, alas.
But your work?
How can I work without that estimable young man? After a few months' training, he had become an invaluable assistant. Such a fatal interruption, such a catastrophe. What do you think of this sad business, Mr. Holmes?
I haven't yet made up my mind.
Ah, well, if you can throw any light upon it, I shall be in your debt. To a bookworm and invalid like myself, it is a paralyzing blow. I seem to have lost the power of thought.
Oh, I'm sure, Professor, that when you've recovered from the shock, you will find your powers returning to you.
Oh.
Then you'll be able to continue your literary work.
Sure, I wish I could be so optimistic. You see that great pile of papers on the side table? Those are but the rough outline of my magnum opus. So much still to be done. I'm an old man.
You study history, I understand.
Ah, yes, my book is an analysis of documents found in the Coptic monasteries of Syria and Egypt. It will strike at the very foundations of revealed religion.
But your reading is not entirely confined to the past. I notice from your shelves you keep abreast of contemporary fiction as well. Crime and Punishment, Anna Karenina. You enjoy Russian literature as well as Russian cigarettes.
No, I divert myself with novels. I do not always enjoy them. Have you read Anna Karenina, Mr. Holmes? A shameful book. The so-called heroine is shallow and worthless and a faithless wife. I could not be bothered to finish reading it.
Forgive me, but I wonder, might I trouble you for another cigarette?
Oh, dear me, you are an even quicker smoker than I am myself.
I am a connoisseur. Thank you.
No doubt you have many questions to ask me, Mr. Holmes. Am I to be subjected to a cross-examination?
I shan't trouble you long, Professor, since I understand you were in bed when the crime was committed and can tell me nothing about it. But just let me ask you this. What do you imagine the young man meant when he breathed his last words, "The Professor, it was she"?
Oh, my dear sir, Tarleton is a country girl with the usual stupidity of her class. Smith may have babbled some incoherent words. She has twisted them into that meaningless message.
So, you have no explanation of the tragedy?
Possibly an accident. Or perhaps between ourselves, you understand, suicide. Young men have their secret troubles. An affair of the heart, perhaps, that we never suspected.
But the eyeglasses?
No. We are aware, are we not, that love objects may take strange shapes? A fan, a glove, a pince-nez. Who knows what may be treated as a token when a lover puts an end to his life? No, I feel certain Willoughby Smith met his fate at his own hand.
Yes. And one more question, Professor. What are the documents you keep locked in the bureau?
Oh, nothing to interest anyone but myself. Family papers, souvenirs of the past, letters from my poor wife. But here's the key. You may examine it for yourself.
The key? Ah, yes. Thank you, Professor, but I hardly think that would help me. Well, I apologise for having trespassed upon your time. We shan't disturb you for a while. At 2 o'clock, we'll come back and report to you upon any further developments. Before I go, I would enjoy another of those excellent cigarettes.
By all means, by all means. It's a pleasure to see how you appreciate them.
Fresh air at last. Upon my word, Holmes, I've never known you to smoke so many cigarettes. One was enough for me.
It was not for my pleasure, I assure you. They might help to unravel the mystery.
Ah, you mean the cigarettes were a clue of some sort?
Well, it's possible that I'm completely mistaken. If so, there's no harm done. We have the opticians to fall back on. But I'd like to take a short cut when I can. Ah, the excellent Mrs. Marker.
Excuse me, gentlemen. I've been preparing luncheon for you in the dining room. It's only a cold collation, some roast beef and salad, but you're very welcome.
That's more than kind of you. I'm sure Dr. Watson will do it justice, though I fear I'm not very hungry. I've been smoking too much.
Not as much as the Professor, I hope, sir. He puffs away like a chimney, all day and half the night as well. When I take in his breakfast of a morning, you'd think it was a London fog. And sometimes he's that cantankerous. Oh, but I shouldn't say that. I know it's his illness makes him awkward now and then.
And I suppose he eats next to nothing.
Well, well, he's variable, as you might say.
I'll wager he took no breakfast this morning, and I dare say he won't be able to face lunch either.
You're wrong there, sir. He ate a very hearty breakfast today and ordered a remarkably big lunch too. It quite surprised me. I mean, what with poor Mr. Smith and all, I don't know how he can bear to look at food. Oh, by the way, sir, I've taken the liberty of asking Inspector Hopkins if he'd care to join you for luncheon. I hope you won't have any objection.